turning up the guy. I'm not really sending the door or something like that. That's just big. So I'm up there the next day and I'm going like, sure. What is it? We just bridged 7,500.
Yeah.
So anyways, we don't want these kids are out.
We have.
I'm not just.
Oh, really? It's turning big. That's all it's gonna do.
Actually, she was.
It's so dry and air's flowing. It's gonna turn and then it ain't gonna grow.
Why should they walk in the yard? Start the meeting. Pledge allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, boys.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Larry. Or Corey, who's a tie.
I heard Larry's voice.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Was there any open forum just got up? None. And we'll go on to number 3 on the agenda, strategic budget alignment presentation. Dr. Tim Frederick will present.
Okay.
Frosty, can you get some lights, please?
Hopefully you guys will be able to spin around and see this for the most part. We will not go through the 30+ slides here. I just want to make sure that as we go through here, we have a better understanding of why we're in a position that we have to address the structural deficit, not only from obviously with the information we now have, with the legislative session being over and it changing the funding formula for the Custer School District and others, but also addressing things that have happened in the past and what we're going to need to do to obviously get our budget where it's more sustainable for programming and for personnel. If you have questions, please let me know. First of all, just creating a little bit of an understanding of what's impacting not just the Custer School District's funding, but I think you could almost say that this is something that's impacting all school districts probably across the United States. It doesn't matter, you know, if you're in South Dakota, in the Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, the South, you're hearing about school districts right now dealing with declining enrollments and issues with funding. And I think a lot of it has to do with the first thing I have up here, the impacts of COVID. You know, all school districts, you know, government agencies all received additional funding during the COVID period and hired different types of folks in their school systems, did different types of programming to try to help kids catch up. And now we're still trying to do the same things, but we don't have that revenue coming in with us. And on top of that, we're really seeing across the United States declining enrollment in K-12 public education. Along with that, we have the impact of high inflation. With us individually as a school district, we have a challenge in that we have, you know, the Custer Elementary, and then we have the Hermosa School, and we all expect that they're going to grow and grow soon, hopefully with everything that's going on. But the reality of it is right now it does create some challenges with additional expenses. Like a lot of school districts have to deal with when your footprint is that expanded, you know, east to west, in our case, even north to south, obviously there's expense with that. You know, the two big things with declining enrollment that we have to deal with is low birth rates. And then in our case, and this is a big thing in the Black Hills region right now, and it's alternative education. Seems like every week, you get a couple more coming in. And so we have to do a better job as a school district, and we have to do a better job in K-12 public education, trying to figure out what we can do to help out those alternative education families in the future. And then the last one on here, which was one that's definitely going to be a positive for our patrons in the community, will be the property tax reform. But it also, and you will see here in a few slides, that also impacts our school district significantly. Questions? So these are some things that just some facts to point out for us as a school district. I should have went back into probably the early 2000s with this, because I think you'd see that the Custer School District, and some of you were maybe in school at that time, but you guys know at one point in time the Custer School District was well above 1,000 students, right? Well, even this year alone, you can see that at the beginning of the year, we were funded at 843. And remember, when you start talking about funding at 843, it's no longer just impacting your general fund, but it also impacts your capital outlay. People in the past, I think, have said that, well, why would we take these students? We don't need these students, but we're going to get this X amount of funding for general fund, and we're not going to get any more. Yeah, you did. You would have been getting more for capital outlay. So every student that we pick up or we lose going forward with the change in the funding formula will impact capital outlay in your general fund. All right, so that's one of the things. The big thing here to point out is Senate Bill 245. As I said, it's going to be a good thing for our property taxes, but it's going to impact us about $1.2 million receiving less revenue or general fund. That was money that was outside of the school funding formula. Other areas that create a structural deficit, and this is something just philosophically that I look at, I think when you have to borrow from your capital outlay, which we do at $700,000 a year, we borrow from impact aid, $750,000 roughly, and creates about a 1.297 from reserves. That is a huge deficit that we have to make up. Now, they've given us that flexibility in capital outlay up to 45%. But we know in the future, when you need rooftops replaced, right? If we decide to get into busing ourselves, there's going to be costs for that transportation. Or it could be other building projects or whatever it might be, HVAC systems, remodeling. You're going to need those capital outlay dollars. So you can't continue just to, take it from this pot to put it to this pot, because at some point what happens? You're going to run out. Other things that are happening, this is happening to everyone. You see by our health insurance, we're looking at about a 10.7% increase. We're looking at a proposed, I'm going to call it a proposed increase in energy. It could be up as high as $81,770 or more or less. Looking at property liability insurance. And then obviously with the teacher pay accountability at 1.4%, we have to make sure that we're moving our salaries at that same rate going forward. Whoops. Let me skip a few of these. All right, some reminders for the school funding formula as we go forward. Remember that because we are a school district that is above 600, I stress that, above 1,600, then our target teacher ratio is 15. That means for every teacher, you should have 15 students. And you'll see me talk a little bit more about this later. Obviously, as we're receiving more mandatory requirements from, it could be from our South Dakota Department of Education, it could be from the federal levels, that's increasing what we need to offer. That number gets a little trickier in trying to stay within that ratio. Target teacher salary for fiscal year beginning in 2026 is $63,700. And there you can see the minimum teacher salary of $46,000. I think the rest of that stuff we should be fine on moving forward. So these are some of the Custer School District challenges as we, and I talk about we, I'm talking about the administrative team, the finance committee, the business managers and myself have gone through and really tried to identify, you know, how do we address these things here? One, how do you address declining enrollment? What can we do to improve our school district footprint? That means what can we do to pick up additional students? What can we do within that footprint of keeping our students in the school district? What can we do as a district to deal with revenue shortages every year due to legislation? You know, I really think the one thing that school districts like the Custer School District, Lee Deadwood School District, probably consider Hill City a little bit, but I really think we need to start looking at legislation and how it impacts us and find a legislator that will carry our story to peer. I don't think people understand the challenges that we have in our district here, you know, with revenues and with expenses, like how expensive it is to live, for example, in the Custer School District. So these are some other things that we looked at, addressing programming. You know, during the COVID, we hired extra para support, we hired interventionist programming, a lot of programming with technology. There was additional service contracts, and then obviously the other two things there are always going to be challenges for all districts. But the big three on there, A, B, and C, are things that we actually can control going forward, and we need to control as we go forward. So how many people have seen these numbers in here? Most of you have, haven't you? So I'm not going to go through in great detail with them, but this is just a snapshot. If you look at from 2015-16 to 25-26, and I use right now, you'll see the next slide, I always look at 2015-16 just because our enrollment is somewhat closer at 872 to the 843, and knowing that in 24-25, 23-24, we've had it, you know, basically that's where your alternative instruction has really picked up. But if you go down through there and you look at, you know, your enrollment on the top, running across, and then you look down here at the bottom at your FTEs, you'll figure out in a hurry that even though our enrollment is declining, and even in some of the cases where you see that enrollment has climbed, like through the 2018, 19, 19, 20, that period, 21, 22, 22, 23, what were some of those kids? Black Hills online students. Some of those kids never touched foot in the district, right? It was during that COVID period of time. So this is where, as we move forward, we're trying to align our revenue with our expenses. These are things that we have to look at. So if you look at the FTEs here, you'll see that we were at 110.71 total FTEs for the district in 15-16. At how many students? 872 students. If you go all the way across to 2025-26, how many FTEs do we have? 140.47.
For less.
So you can see that we've increased a lot, and we have what? Less students. So that's one thing that you have to look at there. I want to commend our administrative team and their efforts this year as we worked on this, because we're really getting close to where we were at in 15-16 at 57.77. As you can see from 25-26, we're at 62. And with the things that we've been looking at doing and what we'll share tonight, I think we're going to be able to get ourselves back down to that number we need to be at in certified. With that being said, the big issue that we have in the district is not necessarily us getting down to 53.7, which would be very close to that. But it's looking at the other side, where you have 44.97 with the red arrow. You have all these other positions that are funded, they're fully funded, which are great positions for all of our kids in the district. But then we have the overhead funding and the funding formula that only covers 38.80%. And you can see from there, we have about 44.97 too many. That's a lot of individuals going back to the number before, about 110. All right, now it's not all bad. Remember, the things that we have are very good. Having interventionists is important. Having behavior techs is important. Having paraprofessionals, it's very important, right? Having custodians, important. But what we have to do is we just have to find a way to streamline what we're doing to make sure, again, that revenues meet our expenses or above our expenses. All right, so what is the impact of Senate Bill 245? The easiest way to show you this is actually showing you basically the calculator. One thing that we need to understand how close we are. What they're telling me and Peter right now is that the first half of this coming year, next school year, we're still going to be outside the funding formula. The second half, we're in the funding formula. But a lot of it matters on what they're doing with property taxes. You know, going to a county commissioner meeting and seeing how they're changing things around, right? If you come in and want things, shifted a little bit, it's gonna impact who? Us as a school district. The other thing that will impact our school district too comes down to the 95% jump to a 98%. Or if we have a very volatile market that people are continuing to pay whatever for properties, because that's going to continue to increase. As those valuations continue to increase, I don't know if the levies, with the adjustments they'll make in peer, if it'll keep up. So my prediction right now, at some point in time, again, probably in the very near future, if we continue to have growth in Custer County, we'll probably be outside the funding formula again, right? But what we're looking at as a district next year, when you run all your numbers through there, you'll see again, I apologize, well, you can see it over here, 56.20 FTEs. That's what we're going to receive funding on based off the number of students we have at 843. But we know we're going to be where? Probably closer to 829, somewhat. So if you look at the bottom number, this past year, we would have received 7.48. And now we're actually going to receive about 1.158 less. Last year, you received even less than that because our enrollment is what? Down a little bit. Questions with that?
So you're saying it goes down even though the taxes aren't going down?
Correct.
We still got money coming in.
Right. So like before, if you're outside the funding formula, everything above that line before, when it was based off the property tax, we as a school district would receive. It wouldn't matter if we had 600 kids, 800 kids, you're gonna receive it. Not gonna receive what we talk about in capital outlay though, because that's capped also per student.
So they're gonna lower the taxes to adjust it by the amount of students in our district?
Your taxes are lower off your levy. And that 0.66, like 8 or 9, whatever it is, that's going to generate about, honestly, I think it's going to generate about 5.8 9. And then the rest, that 300 to 400,000, that's state aid. That's it. Where most school districts, like my meeting I was at this past Thursday, talking to other superintendents in this region, not Lee Deadwood, not us, not Hill City, but others, they're anywhere from 60, 40, one of them was like almost 70% state aid, and the rest was what? Local contribution from taxes.
That's based on a dollar amount figured per student that we should have budgeted.
It's based off of, it's part of per student, but it's also, remember, what your levies generate. And it's not just owner occupied, it's others, and it's ag as well. So this is gonna create about a 1.158 shortage for our district, on top of the 1.2. So the impact of all this, with the declining enrollment, going from 843 to 829, what I can tell you is that, and run the numbers, you're a little bit over 1 FTE. That should answer your question a little bit, Larry, on that. It's about 100,000, a little less in funding. And then obviously it also impacts your 38%, right? That overhead factor. So there's going to be other adjustments that you have to make, which impacts other positions in your district. So in summary, and if you would like to see all 30 plus slides, we can go through it. But I think from what you've been presented, you can see that because we have the number of positions that we have, 140 plus, and we need to be down to what? About 110-ish. That's why we're in such a deficit at this time. So with that, I will take questions.
So are we not currently at the max levy?
We are.
Yeah.
Well, how did we lower that tax burden 2 years ago by over $1 million?
Because even if we take the max, we still were outside of state aid.
Yeah, but we lowered the tax burden on the taxpayers in the district over
Just
$1
to
million.
capital level.
We were maxed on general, but we didn't max capital or special.
Right.
So those two are
levies we
not
didn't
maxed.
max. Correct. That's how we lowered.
Because even if we was to max, we still would not have been in the state aid formula. And to get into state aid, you have to max.
Yeah, we made too much money from taxes.
Right. We were self-sufficient or whatever in our county. So even if we were maxed, it done us no good other than, I guess, keep taking taxpayers' dollar.
I'm just saying, if we're saying we're gonna go down $1 million in revenue, we need to go back up to the max, see what that does. And I don't understand how we're gonna go down $1 million because the valuations in the district are not gonna drop.
No.
They're going up.
But the levies have dropped quite a bit.
Yeah.
We were at like 1.2 this year, we're going down to 0.66.
Yeah.
Or something.
And that was
Don't
Pierce's
quote me on
deal.
Those numbers,
That's
but
not-
it's.
Feared on this for that 245 bill.
Right, they're gonna make up for it in sales tax.
That's where they're saying we should be able to take a 0.5 sales tax and add to our county to make that up.
But because of the way the formula works, that money doesn't come to us.
Because basically, we're spending about double what the state says we should spend to run our school district.
Yeah, but I think you have to look at some of the factors with that. I don't think you're double, but some of the things that we've implemented in the district have been very, very good for kids. And now we just have to adjust, and I think we're very close to, with what we're presenting, you're gonna get down to the certified. The challenge we're gonna have is honestly going to be with the classified and then overhead cost. It's those overhead costs of the 38%. That's high. We can't control property and liability. I wish we could, right? We can't, what's gonna happen when fuel prices go up. We can't control that. We can't control energy costs. We can't control, other things, you really start talking deep about this, you can't control necessarily pricing of housing in this town. Think about your young teachers coming in. So when these people come in, we're naturally gonna have to do what with salaries and benefits?
Right.
Right? Grow them. So there are school districts that have challenging footprints, and we are one of them. And that's the story that we need to be sharing with our legislators when they go to peer and make adjustments. Because there will need to be adjustments with the funding formula in the future.
You said Pierce says we're gonna be in the formula the second half of next year. How is that
Yeah.
gonna work? How are they planning on that working?
Well, that'll come all from your folks here in the county on what they're collecting on the 4.2 to 4.5. And then another thing you have to throw in there is the Senate bill. Help me out, Governor Rowan's bill is at 96, right? I think it was 96,
so.
something like that. That's gonna create some additional challenges because that's at potentially another 0.5 that you can charge locally. So you throw that into the mix, it's gonna actually lower property taxes even more. And it could have an impact as well on others and on ag. Because once you get to a certain point where you're no longer, like in our case, like I said, it's only 400,000. Then what they do is they spread that out on all the levies at the same ratio down. So it's really gonna have a big impact, but the one thing I will share with you that I think our folks at the chamber and others needs to kind of help us out with is that I don't think anybody wants our money that we have to raise here through sales tax from the 4.2 to 4.5 to go where?
Anywhere else. it
Anywhere
needs to
else,
stay here.
but it will. Because once you're above that, then you're right, you're not gonna receive any more. So, when it comes to sales tax. So,
Any other questions?
I just wanna see my tax bill go in half like they say it's going to.
It does,
Mill levy
twice
goes
a year. First half, second half.
because it ain't gonna go down.
Any other questions? Seeing none, you need a motion to go in and out of executive session for SDLC 1-25-2, 1 and 3. And on this fancy new thing, it doesn't give me what those are for.
contracts and negotiations.
Contracts and negotiations.
Personnel,
So
I
moved.
should say.
Second.
Larry and Sarah. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. 6:27. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, principals, if you guys would just stick around